Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Kakashi claimed Naruto early and shaped him into a forbidden shadow leader with a dangerous harem, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And no start a new fanfic. Admittedly, Kakashi was stunned at the fact that according to Sasuke, Naruto was far stronger and more in control than what he had originally thought. It wasn't the Uchiha as everyone had thought who stopped Gaara of the Sand. It was Naruto, and he had done it by summoning Gamabunta, the chief toad. One of if not the strongest summons out in the elemental countries. The only way Naruto could have learned that was from Jiraiya. But the toad sage had not been seen in Konoha for years. He had gone chasing after Orochimaru to bring him back to Konoha. Pondering his thoughts as he looks to question the blonde, Kakashi stops as he overhears other ninjas talking rapidly in excitement. One of the voices is familiar enough that the copycat ninja recognizes Ebisu. Is it true, Ebisu? Did the toad Sannin take a new student? A ninja had asked with excitement. Just the imaginings of one of the legends coming out of retirement to take a student was enough to thrill any and all ninjas into hoping that they too could be chosen. Yes. He took Naruto Uzumaki as his pupil. Ebisu replied with a kind smile. Or should I say Naruto kind of bribed him into taking him on as one. What, he took the demon? About ready to protest, that the blonde youth was no demon. Kakashi is surprised as Ebisu speaks up. Uzumaki is not a demon. He says quietly as he speaks. Telling the others about the positive changes the blonde has made on Konohamaru and his friends, inspiring the little ones to work harder and to help to the best of their ability. The gray-haired ninja begins to become even more puzzled, although proud of his student. You mean, I mean Uzumaki kid is responsible for the changes in my brother. The female voice said in surprise as she was always one to listen. Udon, the grandson's teammate, was her baby brother, and he had changed to a little boy who was almost ashamed of his shyness to one who was starting to speak up with ideas. If that's true, why does everyone think Sasuke and the others are responsible? I think because they want him to be. Ebisu replied sadly. The people of the village you and I both know refuse to see Naruto for the boy that he is. It took actually watching him and the way he was with the honorable grandson for me to see. Maybe they need to see Naruto before they can know him. Thoughtful, Kakashi hears them walking away, but not before. The male had a thoughtful question. Where's Naruto now? Why do you ask? Ebisu replied. Just curious, if what you say is true. I got some stuff I can show the kid. Well, the council just sent Jiraiya off to go and get Tsunade to become the 5th Hokage. And since Jiraiya is the only person who could technically find her, he said he would as long as he was able to take Naruto with him and under his teachings. I bet the council wasn't too pleased with that. The guy chuckled. They probably wanted him to take the Uchiha, God bloodline or not. I have never seen a more stuck-up emotionless kid. Take pity on him. He did go through a lot, you know. Although I admit that's probably true, they probably wanted Jiraiya to take him on as his student. But since Kakashi is the only one with the Sharingan, he is better off with the kid. Ebisu replied. Also, to defend the Uchiha, he isn't all that emotionless. What do you mean? Naruto gets a rise out of him and vice versa. Ebisu chuckled. Did you ever ask Iruka about the time that Naruto and Sasuke? As Ebisu walks off, Kakashi just remains where he sits. Now he knows why he couldn't find Naruto, but he can't help but wonder. Why did Master Jiraiya take the dead last as his student? Elsewhere, Jiraiya watched the blonde youth with fondness. So much like his father Minato, Naruto was eager to learn all that he could. Quizzing the toad sage often about jutsus as they traveled, he had immediately set Naruto to learning one of his father's key techniques, the Rasengan. The youth took to it like a fish to water. Already under his watchful eyes, Naruto is struggling to break a thick rubber ball. Thinking back to the Yondaime, as memories hit him, Jiraiya's thoughts drift to the copy ninja with anger. Konoha. Kakashi worked with the young Uchiha to the best of his ability. Already having helped him learn the Sharingan among other things, the copy ninja found that his work with the youth was growing in leaps and bounds. But something else wasn't. Something that only a blonde that had he trained him alongside the Uchiha might have noticed had he been there. It was something that Kakashi would end up kicking himself over and over years to come. Sasuke's desire for vengeance. Some people, including the ones watching from the heavens, would have pointed out to Kakashi that Naruto's mere presence calmed the Uchiha down to the point that he had still thought about his vengeance. But not as strongly as he would have had he not been placed with said youth. In a way, as Sakura would point out years later, Sasuke was seeing Naruto as his family and no one else. But the blonde for the moment remained forgotten by the copy ninja. His delight in such an apt pupil, that he remains unaware as things are further set in motion. The fight that destroys his three students' spirits, forcing them to grow far beyond their years, is coming. And this time it won't be stopped. A week or so later, Naruto was getting out of the hospital in Konoha after being dragged there by the new Hokage, who unofficially adopts him as a member of her family. The fact that word has already begun to spread via a very drunk Jiraiya, that Naruto was the one responsible for persuading her, villagers were not as prone to get angry at him. Or to hurt him. It was something that made the blonde smile happily in joy. Humming a little tune as he waits for the nurse to let him go via Shizun's orders, Naruto finds himself looking at the door to find Sasuke staring at him. "Hey Sasuke. Dobi." Making a face of irritation, Naruto glares at his friend, unaware that this is the moment that determines the fate of Team 7. Having not been able to hang with Sasuke to train alongside his best friend, because of Kakashi's neglect, he agrees to spar with his friend on top of the roof. He never knew that this meant more to the Uchiha boy than a simple friendly fight between friends. Sakura, suspicious and for the first time realizing that something was dreadfully wrong, as they casually discuss the spar, runs for help. Runs to find their sensei that will soon also make a mistake all his own. Finding him, she doesn't have to say a word, as Kakashi shoots up as two very familiar chakra signatures explode in size. Vanishing in a puff of smoke in mere seconds, Kakashi goes to the hospital to stop it alongside Sakura. Running up to the rooftop, Sakura is screaming as Kakashi becomes a silvery blur. Stop it. Two wrists are caught, one holding a Chidori, the other a Rasengan. Both aimed at one another, neither boy understanding the effects it could have on one another, are thrown far and apart. Sasuke landing close to a billboard and Naruto, a water tower. When they are coming around, two huge mistakes are made. One of which is Naruto is scolded for knowing the Rasengan. Kakashi, not thinking of the fact he had taught Sasuke the Chidori, he reams into the blonde boy who had worshipped him for using it at all. Intent on finding Jiraiya, he does not notice Sakura, who feels that today will become the day of infamy. Or that Naruto was losing all respect he ever had for him. That Naruto, who had so desperately wanted his approval, was effectively being killed by his words of disappointment. Especially as Sasuke was getting nothing but praise. Kakashi did not see Sasuke turn around and view the damage that Naruto had done to the water tower. Did not see the dark eyes widen and punch into the wall behind him. Sasuke had seen what Kakashi did not want to see. Naruto had grown strong. Immensely strong and most definitely in control. That very night, Sasuke Uchiha left Konoha to go to Orochimaru. That night he also decided that should Naruto go after him, he will try and do what Itachi would have wanted him to do. Kill his closest friend. Minato was panicked, his spirit having fled the great god's side as he realized what was happening. He followed his son and friends as they chased after their missing comrade. Only just this morning had Naruto and the others realized that Sasuke was gone. And the only ones available to go after one lone genin would be, of course, other genins. But that was before they had gotten reports that Sound Ninja were there to meet up with the Uchiha. And not just any sound ninja, but the Sound 4. The elite of the sound for all intents and purposes. Thankfully he had managed before he fled to gently urge Tsunade to ask the Sand siblings who were just arriving to go and aid Naruto and the others. If they had not gone when they did, Choji would be more than likely dead as well as Neji. Shikamaru and Kiba would not have made it past their opponents without aid from Kankuro and Temari, as Naruto would not have been free to go after Sasuke without aid from Gaara and the errant Lee. Both of which took on Kimimaro, allowing Naruto to go after the errant youth. While this was going though, and Naruto was catching up to his best friend, his brother practically in his opinion, Kakashi was returning. Immediately upon hearing of what had happened, something akin to guilt began to wash over him. He left anyway. I failed, ran rampant through his thoughts. Without even being told or stopped, Kakashi had already turned around and went after the boys, summoning his nin dogs as he was leaving. The hounds took off, all ready to sniff out the trails of the boys, and to pray that he is not too late to stop Naruto and Sasuke from making the biggest mistake of their lives. One by one he comes across medic nin teams aiding in the search for the boys. Choji, then Neji are carried away. Kiba is lifted away moments later alongside Kankuro. Kiba and Akamaru, although worse for wear at the moment, seem to be smiling as he talks with the Sand Ninja. Fighting sometimes does after all help to cement bonds between allies. Shikamaru, on the other hand, is walking fine except for cradling his hand. Temari beside him looking exhausted. It was the two of them out of those whom he had seen who looked the least damaged. Continuing on, he runs into Lee and Gaara, both boys in similar conditions to Shikamaru and Temari, but both looking far worse than the others. Although still walking and talking to each other, the two had faced the toughest of the Sound Ninja. In fact, they were intent on coming with them to stop and to retrieve Sasuke if at all possible. Understanding this, Kakashi had already taken off as Pakun had picked up Naruto's scent with ease. Leaving one dog for the two to catch up with as soon as they are able, he runs and leaps into the trees. Moving faster and faster, he almost falls out as that immense feeling of chakra they same before as on top of the hospital erupts. No. Rushing forward now, Kakashi sees nothing but bright white light. And he knows that this is the chakra from two of the most powerful ninjutsu attacks. One he had created and the other his former sensei had done years ago. Arriving at what is known as the Valley of the End, Kakashi looked around in the falling rain. Pakun, can you smell them? Sniffing the ground, the dog is off like a shot heading towards one of the statues. Looking down and off the cliffside, Kakashi sees a motionless orange form on a small platform beneath the image of one of the first Hokages of Konoha. Leaping down, praying above all else that he is not seeing things, Kakashi is almost ready to cry as he finds his student struggling to stay alive. Although his skin if fully healed, Kakashi is no fool as he sees the hole through Naruto's jumpsuit, one perfectly fitted the size of a Chidori belonging to Sasuke. What have I done? Kakashi whispered to himself. Pakun wisely says nothing as he sniffs the headband beside him. It's Sasuke's. The hound said with a quiet sadness as Kakashi bends down. You gave it your all, didn't you, Naruto? The copy ninja said sadly as he placed the Sasuke's head wrap on Naruto's stomach. Picking up the youth, he manages to get Naruto onto his back. Leaping up carefully, adjust chakra when he needs to, Kakashi reaches the top with relative ease. Still, as he looks at the devastation below, Kakashi could almost sense the pain and guiltiness radiating from not just Naruto, but Sasuke. A whimpering sound from his precious cargo is emitted, and his eyes open slowly and almost glassy with pain. Elsewhere, someone whose eyes are identical stops, before he continues on his path. A look of relief on his features mixed in with the pain and sorrow of loss. Some bonds are not meant to be broken. Resisting the urge to go after the errant youth, as the pained cry of the one on his back erupts, Kakashi leaps away. A soft questioning sound of a single name asking for the whereabouts of his best friend. Sasuke. Naruto whimpered in agony as his normally bright blue eyes had become darker. His tanned skin, normally brown, was a sickly yellow. Shaking his head silently, Kakashi pauses long enough to move his hands from behind and send the youth into a deep resting sleep. By that time, the medics had caught up, and even then their eyes widen in sadness at the state of the fox child. He is healing slowly. Come, we must get him back to Konoha. Nodding their head, the medics who normally would refuse to treat him, had seen the sadness before Kakashi had sent him to sleep in the boy's eyes. No one who could be suffering that much could be a demon. Moving forward and ahead now, Kakashi races back to the village. His thoughts upon the two boys, who were his students. A couple of days later, Kakashi found himself distantly looking at the window where a blonde youth slept wrapped in several bandages to help his body heal. Wanting to say he is guarding him from any villagers that might think now was a good time to hurt him, in a way Kakashi knew better. He was feeling guilty. Unlike Sakura, who had decided to do something about the pain she felt for not being able to help by approaching Tsunade. Kakashi fled. After all, he failed Sasuke, did he not? He failed his student, the one who was among the last of Obito's family. Sorrow in his gaze, Kakashi leaps away, promising himself that later on when Naruto was out of the hospital he would offer to train the blonde. It wouldn't be until much later when he goes looking for his student, which Kakashi realizes he is now alone for the next 3 or so years. Sakura is gone to Tsunade. Sasuke having fled to Orochimaru. And the one person, the one whom he thought about but always told himself whom he would help later, the one whose loss he was beginning to feel deep in his heart, was gone with the last of the Sannin. Jiraiya the Toad Sage had taken Naruto as his student, to teach him and to help train him to go against the Akatsuki. And to possibly get his friend back. For now, if there was anyone who truly understood what Naruto was going through, it was Jiraiya. Because the one person who could have stopped it before it happened, never noticed the influence he had on both until too late. Over the next 3 years, Kakashi would learn what he could have done, and regret every single thing. Naruto. Sasuke. Sakura. I'm sorry. 3 years. 3 years can be a long time to wait. And a long time to forget. Kakashi should know that most of all. But yet things still do not click with him as he goes off for one mission or another. The pain in his heart increasing a little bit more at the mentions of Sasuke from the villagers who want their precious Uchiha back. Still, as much as his heart aches with failure over the dark-haired boy, his no longer remembers what he had promised himself concerning his other students. Sakura no longer turns to him to see his companionship as she has found her own in Tsunade and Shizune. Sasuke, from all reports, is learning from Orochimaru and is becoming colder and more emotionless. Unlike the youth who was opening up thanks to the efforts of a singular blonde individual. The one he tried to kill. Admittedly, he feels regret over that, yet he does not think of Naruto as often. To be honest, he tries not to and has not, because since he had left he had felt pain in his heart, at the thought of the blonde being taught by someone else. It literally made him in the beginning, fight his own urge to take his student back. Never realizing that if he had gone after the young boy, who despite loving the attention was missing the first people to actually accept him with all his heart. Especially the teacher he longed to seek approval from. But as time passes, people quit thinking when there is no word. People quit remembering when there is nothing really to remember. It's horrible to do that to oneself. But it is done. That is why he kept taking mission after mission, to keep the pain away. Without pain, though, one can forget things. Kakashi promised himself he would not, but he did forget his promise to himself. That is why he did not rush immediately as a little boy and his 2 friends came running pell-mell through the streets that day looking for the members of the Rookie 9 that were in town. He's back. The voices of 11-year-olds Moegi, Udon and Konohamaru screamed as they went from clan to clan looking for the 15-year-olds, which were Naruto's closest friends. Sakura, already having been with them when they first found out, was happily chatting with the youth and Jiraiya. And as they approached the Hokage Tower, Naruto was greeted by a crowd of ninjas. "Hey Dobi!" Kiba shouted as he and Akamaru bounded over. The latter, literally knocking the blonde to the ground, starts licking Naruto's face with glee at seeing an old friend. As the dog is forcefully to a degree, giving their old friend his affections, the group of friends takes in Naruto's new changes. Taller now, standing around 5 feet 10, his hair was definitely in the same spiky style as before, but longer in the spikes, that now drooped messily around the Konoha leaf symbol. His bright blue eyes wide and happy to see them. As Kiba finally gets his partner off, the girls take in the fact that he has taken on a more aristocratic look. His body was lean and muscular, and encased still in the usual bright orange. But now it was also in a more or less predominantly black jumpsuit, but for the bright colored stripe across the top and down the sides. "Damn Naruto, you look good," Ino said with a grin as she pounced on him. The blonde allows herself to be swung as does Sakura as both girls are hugged beyond belief. Hinata, hanging back a little bit, can't help but feel jealous. Still, she see gently pushed forward by Ten, who smiles with delight as Naruto picks her up to swing her a bit. Buns. Smacking him upside the head, for calling her that, Neji, Choji, and Lee try not to crack up while Hinata approaches Naruto shyly. "Hello Naruto-kun," the dark-haired Hyuga girl said warmly. Only to find herself being hugged as well, pressed so close against his body. The others can't help but giggle, as once again, Hinata faints in blissful happiness. As this is happening, Kakashi finds himself watching from up high. His surprise at seeing how much his student has changed, a small twinge of guilt erupts from within. Regretfully, he had hoped that Naruto was the same loudmouth brash youth he had been years ago. Although he still shows some signs of that personality, Kakashi can tell Naruto has changed and is far more in control of his strength. Watching as they continue on, the copy ninja is startled as a much older and powerful ninja appears beside him. "You know, despite what I think of you, I am turning him over to your protection and also training." Tsunade already knows and has agreed. "You are the best now available to help Naruto be prepared for them," Jiraiya stated quietly. Shame at the fact he can sense the repulsion in Jiraiya's voice that coolly derides him of the proud feeling he had gotten at the sight of the blonde. "I understand. Finish teaching him his father's techniques," the Sannin ordered. "I left those two out for you, Kakashi, to show him. After all, you helped his father develop those skills." Confused and puzzled, Jiraiya chuckles and vanishes, but not before saying one simple thing. "Remove the whiskers from his cheeks, Kakashi, and tell me, who do you see? I leave it to you to tell him, once you realize it." Puzzled by Jiraiya's words, Kakashi finds his eyes drifting to Naruto. In his mind, he does as Jiraiya requests. But instead of Naruto, he finds himself looking at the Yondaime, his former teacher. Looking at the mountain rapidly and then back at the blonde several times, Kakashi's pain grows as he realizes what he should have noticed years ago. Not only did he fail Obito in protecting his baby cousin Sasuke long after his death, he failed to be a part of the life belonging to his beloved sensei's son, Naruto Uzumaki. Resolve deep within him, Kakashi vows to do his best to be there for the blonde. To train him in his father's techniques even further, so that he can reach the Raisenshuriken and the Hiraishin. Maybe by then he could win back Naruto's friendship, at least as his former student's gaze meets his. And looks away. Kakashi quietly watched from the rooftops later that night as Naruto hung out with Sakura and his friends. Although the two had invited him to join them, after the test Tsunade had asked him to do with them, Kakashi had declined. Holding up the book Naruto had gotten him from his favorite author, Jiraiya, the older man had disappeared in his usual puff of smoke, only to reappear above them and watch with a quiet longing. Looking back at that time this afternoon, Kakashi was not expecting anything save a hello. But the fact that the only person who got a present from Naruto out of all the people the youth knew, was him. The ninja almost wanted to refuse it. He didn't deserve Naruto's thoughtfulness. He honestly truly believed he didn't. But looking into those quiet blue eyes, that half expect him to reject it, he was happy to see surprise in them as he took the book gratefully. He was even more overjoyed when Naruto had given him a shy smile that, unlike others, was quiet and true. For the first time, Kakashi had looked forward to testing his two former students, and they both passed with flying colors. Although both will call him Kakashi Sensei out of habit, they were his teammates now and no longer his pupils. Watching the blonde chat happily with Sakura and Team 8, Shino having recently returned from a mission, the five teenagers were talking about maybe catching a movie. All of them wanting to hang out and relax with a friend. It is not much longer that Team 10 joins the duo, and soon all of them are off to the movie theater. When will you tell him about Minato? Turning around to find Jiraiya looking at him with a mixture of disgust and curiosity, Kakashi looks away and does not answer. I don't know exactly, the gray-haired copy ninja replied. Not now. Not when he is like this though. Not when he is happy. Jiraiya said quietly. I can see your point there, but the older he gets, Kakashi, the more he will start looking like his father. All it takes is for one of Minato's old enemies to see him to know that they are related. With Akatsuki coming for him, he will be sent out on missions a lot. The more he moves, the safer he is. Kakashi winced out. The thoughts of what the rock nin alone would do to the blonde should they see him was indeed quite painful to his heart. So you will tell him soon then, right? Yes. Giving one last sigh, Jiraiya fishes a stack of papers out of his bag. Small and numerous in number, Kakashi takes them with a puzzled expression. I have taught Naruto how to access and control the Kyuubi's chakra. He can safely work up top 3 tails and control it without getting too worn out. Anything past that, I use these to drain him. Yes. Jiraiya stated quietly. Although it is a temporary solution, it is the best one we have at the moment. Use them sparingly. Understood. The ninja replied as he takes the small stack of papers and places them in a pouch to the side. And Kakashi. Don't wait too long. I knew Naruto's father as a child. But you knew him as a man. The old man said softly. Don't wait too long. That said, a toad appears and Jiraiya hops upon his back. Vanishing moments later as the toad leaps into the night sky. Now left to reflect on his memories, Kakashi finds himself buying a ticket for the movie that Naruto and his friends had gone to see, without realizing it. Intending to watch the film to remember those times he had done so with Rin, Obito, and Minato-sensei. He instead finds his eyes drifting to laughing figures in the middle of the theater. Naruto was avidly watching the movie starring Princess Yuki from Snow Country. A favored actress and former client, Kakashi found himself smiling as the memory of the then blonde 12-year-old encouraging her to fight for her people hit him. Watching the movie, his thoughts about it make him realize that the youth had always been subtle and yet strong about encouraging his friends and his family to grow. He had never let them give up on who they were, he simply set them on a different path that they could do. That they could love. Thoughtful about those whom Naruto has influenced in their shared past, not once did Kakashi realize what the blonde youth was doing to him. Not once did he realize that with his mere presence, Kakashi had found himself turning to a new path himself. A loner out of choice, out of regret for the loss of those most important. Naruto, with aid from a spirit from long ago, was giving the older man a chance to never be alone again. Kakashi was admittedly worried as he watched Naruto sleep fitfully in the woods. 2 weeks after his return and placement with Kakashi and Sakura, Naruto and the two of them had gone to Tsunade to see about missions higher than C or D rank. Little was Naruto and the others to know that this would be far higher than that. One whom almost destroyed Konoha if not for the blonde was in danger now. Gaara of the Sand and Cage of Suna, as well as fellow Jinchuriki, had been kidnapped by Akatsuki. Naruto's strongest enemies were now officially on the move. He was quite hesitant to take the mission, especially after what Jiraiya had told him alongside Tsunade before they were testing him. If Akatsuki was going to come after Naruto, wouldn't it have been better to send him anywhere but where they were? But the blonde youth would have none of that, and his own words came back to him via bright blue eyes. Those who leave their friends behind are worse than trash. He took the mission, and he as well as Sakura left with the blonde youth that very day. While they had been traveling, Sakura had asked some very pertinent questions of Naruto, ones that the young man did not want to answer, except for this statement. Gaara is like me. Puzzled by this, Sakura said nothing else, but Kakashi's heart and soul nearly broke with those 4 painful words. It explained so much about that time 3 years ago and the events that happened in the woods. The one where he had started to lose his 3 precious students. Sakura was held prisoner and Sasuke had nearly died fighting the demon vessel from the sand. Many to this day still thought it was Sasuke, despite facts proving it was the blonde, who had saved them from Shukaku's wrath. It brings forth Ebisu's words from so long ago. They choose not to see what is in front of them. Never have truer words been spoken on behalf of this bright young man. Slowly and with time, ninjas of the leaf had apparently been taking another look at the blonde since his return. Why? It seems the young man whom Ebisu had talked to years ago alongside a woman, was Kotetsu of the guards. And being the curious ninja that he was, he decided to talk to Naruto's classmates. They all confirmed from their own experiences that Naruto was not a demon and that they themselves had to teach him the basics in just about everything the boy knows when it comes to simple reading and writing. Shikamaru and Shino were the ones who did most of the tutoring with aid from the other boys in the class who were happy to lend Naruto their books to use. Kiba was the one who played and challenged him in hands-on practice, besides the well-known Uchiha boy. And Choji. Well, Naruto and Choji shared a common love of something strong between them. Something that the boy was willing to share often since his mother made so much and he noticed the blonde little. He gave Naruto food for while he was in school. But ironically, neither boy knew that Choji's mother had seen the longing as well from Naruto. Despite what her husband believed at that time, Mrs. Akamichi was a good woman who could plainly see the child within Naruto screaming for a little bit of love and friendship. She knew her son well and deliberately made too much for him to eat by himself, allowing him to share with a boy who barely had any good food. In the end, when they realized what she had contributed later, Naruto had all but cried as he asked to hug her. The woman accepted it with a warm and gentle smile. "You are a good boy, Naruto. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise." Word spread thanks to Kotetsu, and slowly ninjas were giving Naruto another look and the stories concerning events around Team 7 a closer inspection. Most of them were realizing the differences and got up the courage to go after the truth themselves. What they found out, and especially after realizing the reports of Gaara and how he was treated, made them realize that if it wasn't for the kindness of these children and the few who were willing to look underneath the prankster exterior, Naruto could have easily ended up like Gaara. The fact that he didn't has earned him many a second look from his fellow shinobi and villagers. Things were changing for the blonde youth. Gaara. Startled by the sudden yell and awakening of the youth, Kakashi found himself looking at the blonde who has fear and worry in his bright blue eyes. His fists clenched to the point the knuckles were white. Kakashi found himself trying to cheer up the blonde who was frightened for his missing friend. "He'll be all right, Naruto." Blue eyes flash with hope at his words as Naruto looks up at his sensei from years ago. "You think so?" "Yeah, I do." The older man responded with a kind smile behind his mask. Giving a small and grateful look to the copy ninja, Naruto lies back down, but not before asking one thing that startles the older man. Do you think? Think what? That I will ever become Hokage?" Kakashi was not only startled by this question. He was stunned, at the nervous, almost painful cry in Naruto's voice that just about broke his heart. "It's your dream, isn't it, Naruto?" The ninja replied with a concerned look. Why do you doubt it now?" "I don't know," Naruto whispered quietly. His only response as he drifts back to sleep. Kakashi can't help but remember the expression as his eyes closed. One of despair. "What has happened to you, Naruto? Why are you so sad?" Not realizing that Naruto has heard, Kakashi never knows that his question is answered. Because I'm scared. I'm scared that I'm going to fail everyone. Even though she had died to do what she did, Kakashi was grateful to Chio for restoring Gaara for so many reasons. Several inconsequential, as it only had to refer to dealings with Konoha as an ally. The main and primary reason was his blonde pupil. If Gaara had truly died, even though he and his former students mourned the elder woman's death, it might have broken the blonde in more ways than one. He finally realized that Naruto values the Kazekage as more than just someone who understands him. He needs the redhead as a friend. Although definitely different from his missing student the Uchiha, Kakashi found himself observing similar mannerisms that the dark-haired youth had displayed in his time in Konoha. But unlike Sasuke, Gaara, much to the delight of the villagers and his siblings, had opened himself up to the people. He was still of course a killer, and would do it without a doubt. But Gaara was tempered now, more sedate and thoughtful of his actions. He had become a leader worthy of his villagers' respect. But to Naruto, he became a true best friend. For unlike with Sasuke, where they bonded so close, one would swear they were indeed siblings. The closeness in emotions between the two young men could only be described as deep friendship. Gaara's death would have crushed Naruto's spirit. Chio's saving him at the cost of her own life had made it soar with hope despite the sadness at her own death. Kakashi-sensei. Looking up to find his only former female student looking at him, Kakashi raises an eyebrow in response to her tentative query. What is it, Sakura? Naruto, he's a demon vessel, isn't he? Eyes widening, the older man hops from his position and gestures for her to follow him into a separate room. Glad that Naruto is busy chatting with the Sabuku siblings, he looks at one of the few people whom the blonde treasures. What makes you ask that? When we had left to the hideout, Chio was saying some things, and well after what had happened to the Kazekage and all. I got to thinking, is that why those men wanted Naruto after what they did to Gaara? I mean, they had insinuated that the other was there when we broke through. You always were one of my brightest, Sakura. Kakashi said sadly. You do realize that what I am about to tell you is classified as a SS secret in Konoha. Nodding her head, Sakura listens as Kakashi details the true and actual events of that night 15 years ago. As the words come forth, neither one realizes that a blonde was listening and trembling outside the door. About ready to make a break for it, a gentle smile from Temari as well as hands upon his shoulder from Gaara and Kankuro stop him. Listen and then react, Naruto-kun. Temari said with a warm smile. Poor Naruto. Sakura whispered sadly. That explains so much of everything. You do not think he is the demon? Kakashi asked with a smile that shouted approval. Of course not. The pink-haired girl responded with glare of, do you think I'm an idiot? I mean, with all that happened, if Naruto was truly a demon, seal or not, I don't think that would have stopped the Kyuubi from lashing out at everyone. Inside the seal, a fox demon looks up and growls, simply a statement that causes the blonde to hold back a chuckle in relief. Thank you. There is a human who is not stupid. I think Naruto would be very proud to call you his friend. Kakashi chuckled. Well, the idiot better. Sakura giggled. I ain't going to lose him either. After all, he still intends to bring Sasuke back, and this time I'm going to be there to help him. Smiling genuinely, it was that time that Naruto chose to enter the room followed by the Sabakus. The cue given, Kakashi and Sakura both stand up and gather their things as others that had come to aid them had long since already gone. In their need to save Gaara, Team Guy had been sent to aid them. It was lucky that they did. The Akatsuki had set traps and they had to face 4 of the ninjas in head-on combat. Guy's team was lucky to only have to face Kisame of the Mist. Kakashi and his team, the other 3. Sasori of the Red Sands, whom Sakura and Chio had successfully killed. As well as Deidara, whom they are hoping, thanks to Kakashi's new Mangekyo Eye, was dead as well. But doubt had crept into their minds, and well, he may be gone, but the consensus was that the blonde clay ninja from Rock was not out. And last they had to face the one who got away. Itachi. If Sasuke had known what Kakashi and the council knew now, he may have never left Konoha. After all, his brother would be coming for the nine-tailed fox Jinchuriki. Also known as Naruto Uzumaki, his one and only real friend in the dark-haired youth's opinion. But something tells Kakashi that it will not be long before the rumors spread and knowledge is fully known of what the Akatsuki wants. And he worries about the blonde for a reason that ties into his relationship with the Uchiha. Sooner or later, Sasuke will come back to Konoha for Naruto. The reasons are what frightens him. The one reason he hopes is because of the bonds of brotherhood that had manifested between the two boys growing up. The reason he does not want is for Sasuke to return to use Naruto as bait for his brother. Kakashi winced as he left the blonde alone with Yamato. The looks on the youth's face hurt him as he knows Naruto must be thinking that once again he was abandoning him. But since they have returned to Konoha, that feeling of danger has never left him. He had hoped by teaching the youth the continuation of his father's skill, he could work up the courage to tell him about his father and who he was. He had hoped it would by all accounts aid him in getting rid of this feeling and bond him closer to the blonde who was showing signs of trust and adoration in him. Feelings that he never really noticed until now. Ones that made him feel warm, almost paternal towards the youth. But it only made things worse. And that is when the news reached him as well as others in the shinobi ranks. Asuma Sorotobi was dead, according to the team that had left to give and deliver aid to Suna. They had run into two of the Akatsuki members, and unlike Team Kakashi, most of them did not make it alive. He could see the need for vengeance in the eyes of the rest of Team 10. Two young men and one woman who adored Asuma as he was their sensei and later their friend. Those were emotions that he now understands all too well, for he could have had that sense of loyalty if he had spent more time with Sakura and Naruto. Two of his students who stayed but found others to teach them what they wanted to know. He desperately wanted to make amends to his two former students. Kakashi knew that if anything were to happen then, nothing short of death would make Naruto and Sakura not stop till all of Akatsuki was dead. They were three of his very near and dearest friends to his two former students. He had to go and give them his aid as best he can. Forgive me, Naruto. Leaping into the trees outside Konoha as he had arrived at his destination, he waited. And it was not long that his waiting was rewarded as Shikamaru, followed shortly, by Ino and Choji came out with intent to go after the two Akatsuki who had killed their teacher. Listening as Tsunade tried to talk them out of it, Kakashi waited for his moment and leapt to the ground. Then send me with them. They are all startled by the sudden sound of his voice and they find themselves staring at him as he leans casually against a tree with his all too familiar book in hand. Tsunade sending him a clear message of what the hell you were doing stalks over to him momentarily telling the three younger ninjas to stay. What about Naruto? She mutters angrily. I thought you were going to train him in his father's jutsu. You knew. The blonde nods her head angrily in response. I've always known. Who do think Minato asked to come back long enough to help his wife deliver? Giving a small sigh, Kakashi tells the older blonde woman of his fears for the youth under his protection. A understanding rolls over the older woman's features as she begins to relax as well as worry for the boys she sees as her family. You really think so? Yes. Kakashi said quietly. If things happen like I suspect they will, you know the three of them will go regardless if you keep me here. And they will get killed regardless of the Nara's genius. At least allow me to help them get a fighting chance, not for my sake, but for theirs and Naruto and Sakura's sanity. So be it. Tsunade responded with a tinge of regret. And maybe a little bit of respect. But don't you dare die on me, Kakashi. Naruto and Sakura need you as well. Turning around, the blonde woman yells. Team 10. You and Kakashi are to go and investigate the presence of the Akatsuki between here and Suna. Understood? Shikamaru, you are in charge, but you will listen to Kakashi. Understood? Puzzled by the joining of their friend's favored teacher to their team, Shikamaru nods his head. Moments later, the four vanish without a trace. In the meantime, Tsunade is already working on a backup plan. Although Kakashi was good, This was Akatsuki after all. He and the others will need more than just them to face off against these ninjas. Time to make a certain blonde learn even faster. Kakashi found himself fighting the urge to hug Naruto senseless or beat the crap out of him for being such an idiot. The youth was still in the hospital alongside Sakura, Yamato as well as the rest of Team 10 and himself. The only one of them able to leave though at the moment was everyone but Naruto. Naruto had indeed completed the Rasenshuriken as his father the Yondaime had tried to create and would have if not for the Kyuubi. Tsunade had given him an ultimatum essentially, before she had sent him as well as Sakura and Yamato to aid them. Essentially learn the Rasenshuriken now, or lose your friends. So Naruto had gotten over halfway through the process before he had taken off after his sensei and Team 10, much like his father would have. Kakashi finds himself remembering with a fond smile. But the smile turns to a sad one as he remembers other things. There were many things his former teacher who had told Kakashi many times as he trained him, that he would do once he was able to have a family. Events that he would have counted on Kakashi to be there to do as well as his other students if he could not. Giving a small sound of pained regret as he feels that in many ways he had failed the blonde, he is stunned to find tears flowing down his cheeks. Ones that he did not realize he was giving until a young brown-haired woman, who was quite familiar to many, brushed them away with a clean cloth. You were worried about him, weren't you? Startled to find Shizune looking at him with a kind face, Kakashi looks away without saying a word. Never before has he allowed himself to give in to his emotions. At least not since the deaths of his former teammates, as well as his father. He had thought there was nothing left in him to really cry about. He understands more than most think, you know. Shizune said without really directing it towards anyone in particular. He is just so used to playing what people expect. Turning to her, Kakashi finds himself staring at the profile of the young woman with a gaze that was a mixture of emotions. Some good and some bad, but within that gaze was also a willingness to listen. People had always had expected him to be a fool, to be happy and to be so strong in his beliefs. Today I saw Naruto, as I had done only once before. He is very much like what they expect, but one cannot be that way all the time. You can only fill a bottle up with so much water before it flows over the top and makes a mess. But for Naruto, when that bottle breaks, who will he turn to help him clean it up? With that said, Shizune walks away, leaving Kakashi to think. And to once again regret over his negligence of the youth who at the moment was surrounded by many of his friends. Sakura was lying on the bed beside him, feeding him ramen as the fifth worked on bandaging his arm. The jutsu that Naruto had completed did indeed work wonders, and the Leaf had taken their first real Akatsuki prisoner. Kakuzu had been captured because of Naruto's jutsu, but the use of it ranked as a forbidden art. For it did do its job and damage Kakuzu to the point all his chakra coils were closed up. But if it wasn't for the fox demon inside him, it would have done the same thing to Naruto. Already he as well as many of the other shinobi, had been told that Naruto was never to use it again unless in dire emergencies. It would be ranked a forbidden A-class jutsu skill, because of the backlash could kill most ninjas who dared to use it. That's one reason why he wanted to yell at Naruto and beat him senseless himself. Watching the battle the blonde had with that Akatsuki member, he had observed the damage that skill was doing to both parties in the fight. And he had told Naruto that he should not use it, that it was taking a lot out of him. The truth of the matter was, though, if it was not for Naruto going against him and directly using it once more, Kakuzu might have killed them all regardless of the fact Shikamaru had succeeded in getting rid of his partner Hidan. The way the genius had done it, though, made Kakashi smile. His dear friend Asuma would have been proud. Finding his eyes drifting to the blonde, he knows someone else who had long since left this life would have been proud as well. Sensei. How do I tell him? Hearing the voice of the long-gone Yondaime, Kakashi remembers. There is never a good time to spill a secret, Kakashi, Rin. The blonde intones thoughtfully. They had overheard over their return of how Anko had spilled the secrets of her former master Orochimaru to a Hokage who was not at all happy. Why? Isn't it better that it's out? No one can ever get hurt like that again. Rin exclaimed. Someone is always bound to get hurt and regret ever having told. Young and innocent alike. The older man states quietly as he steps in quickly to prevent villagers from attacking the young girl who had betrayed her own sensei to save many. Anko, staring at them in a mixture of confusion, smiles her thanks before she takes off in a flash. But in the end, although the pain is strong, in the end it is worth it for the one who told, and the one who is told. And what is it worth, sensei? A young Kakashi asked, his eye still bandaged from Obito's death months before. The youth struggled to adjust in training now to get used to it and to its gift. Hope and freedom, Kakashi. Hope and freedom. Hope that their secret would be accepted, and freedom in the knowledge that they had done what they had to do. Telling it to the person who needed to hear it the most. With that in mind, he opened the door to Naruto's room, gesturing for all to leave them alone for a moment. Tsunade, looking at him with a puzzled expression for a moment, realizes what Kakashi intends to do and nods her head in acceptance. Okay, Naruto, as of this moment, you are off the duty roster until I say so. Ah, Ba-chan. Glaring at the blonde with her fist raised, Naruto used his arm smartly as a shield, much to Kakashi's amusement and Tsunade's anger. You wouldn't hurt a wounded man, would you, Ba-chan? Naruto asked innocently and with an impish grin. Glaring at him, Tsunade just gives him a look. Just you wait, you little brat, just you wait. She replied with a smile on her face that despite her anger she couldn't help but have. Leaving the two alone now, Naruto gives a smile, but one that is guarded, as he thinks his former teacher is going to yell for not listening to him. What is it, Kakashi-sensei? Hearing the cool and guarded tone in his voice, Kakashi knew Naruto was upset at what he perceived was his virtual abandonment to finish learning the jutsu with Yamato. I'm sorry. Startled by those two words, a pair of blue eyes had to blink several times as they took his confession in. Sorry. For what? There is something I have been meaning to tell you, something I should have noticed long ago, but never really did. The copy ninja said as looked at the confused eyes of the youth before him. He hopes that Naruto will forgive him for being even more blind than ever. Kakashi-sensei. The older man looks into the similar features of his former teacher and leader, sighing as he reassures the blonde that he was simply trying to find the right words. Kakashi then turns towards the window as he stands up. His courage failing him, he simply blurts out what he was struggling so tactfully to tell him. I know who your father was. A silence fills the room, one that emanates from both inside it. The only emotion within are ones of fear, and anger, and confusion. What? Came the voice of his former student, quiet and in shock over those words spoken with such ferocity that he almost choked on the water he was drinking. I know who your father was. Kakashi said quietly and with shame. It was my former teacher, the man who taught me. It takes only a moment, before Naruto realizes whom Kakashi was referring to. Cheeks are slowly tinged with red as an anger and sadness overwhelm him. Is that why you ignored me? Because no, Naruto. Just go. Naruto stated with such vehemence that Kakashi obeyed. Leaving the youth alone in his room and Kakashi crying inside with regret and sadness, as he walked away. Kakashi watched with quiet yearning as Naruto worked on his training alongside Sai and Sakura, under Yamato's supervision. The former Anbu, although young, was a good choice for the youth, in terms of power and in personality to be leader and trainer. Different from himself in so many ways, Yamato had a calm and serene wisdom about him, which helped Naruto to think and not act first. At the moment they had returned from a mission that had been hushed up. That although classified as a failure, it also served as a permanent placement of the young ink ninja Sai as part of the team. Brooding and a little blunt, Sai was like Sasuke to some degree, and in others he was not. But yet, with his addition, a life came to both of his former students. One that helped them to think and to be able to talk about their missing friend better. It was that air given by both newcomers, which caused Naruto to often speak and question the other men about so many things involving jutsus and even life in general. That Kakashi was hurting inside as he watched this was strange and painful. For it was supposed to be him that the blonde turned to. Not Yamato. Not Sai. Punching his fist hard into a wall, it is Tsunade who stands there with her eyes filled with honest-to-goodness compassion. Why? Why does it hurt so much? He looked at her pleadingly with his one good eye. Despite the ninja code that he followed to a T with his own set of rules, Tsunade could almost see the anguish and jealousy deep in his soul. Because deep down you know it could have been you standing there and not Yamato. Tsunade responded. Has he still not spoken to you? Shaking his head, Tsunade lets out a quiet sigh. So you do not know either of what happened then. I figured he would have told you. Told me what? They ran into Sasuke. Whirling to look at her, Tsunade already shook her head as if to head him off at the pass. No, they did not bring him back. He had fled with Orochimaru after their meeting, where Sasuke once again tried to kill Naruto. I see, so he was after it then. Kakashi said quietly. Kakashi, I had often wondered what would make Sasuke want to kill Naruto. The bond between those two boys was strong. Almost like brothers even. So why would Sasuke kill him? The copy ninja stated with a mixture of disgust and sadness. It turns out he was after the Mangekyo. Isn't that Itachi's Sharingan and the ultimate form? Yes, but unlike myself, there is another and faster way to get from what I have researched. The user must kill their closest and dearest friend. Paling at those words, Tsunade struggled not to faint. Why? I do not know. Kakashi said honestly. The only person, or should I say being who knows the answer to that, and as far as I know refuses to answer currently resides within Naruto. The Kyuubi. Nodding his head, Kakashi grasps his hands once more on the railing of the rooftop. The fox was the one who created the Sharingan within the Uchiha clan. I see, it explains the report that Naruto gave me. Report? Yes, that incident I told you about. Sasuke apparently now has the ability to go within the seal. And according to what Naruto has stated, the fox knew what clan Sasuke was from and compared it to the strength of Madara Uchiha. Silent for a moment, Kakashi is thoughtful and pensive. Turning to look at the elder blonde, he has a worried look on his features that begins to frighten her. What is it, Kakashi? I think history is going to repeat itself and badly, Tsunade-sama. I don't know why or even how this feeling, but I have a feeling we are heading for the next shinobi war, and Sasuke and Naruto will be in the middle of it. Kakashi aid quietly. And it will destroy them. As my grandfather and uncle were. Nodding his head, he turns to look at the blonde whose gaze drifts towards him from down below. Frowning in anger and rage, the youth drags Sakura and the others with him to go elsewhere. Much to the pain in Kakashi's heart. You may have to order him to train with me, Tsunade-sama. Kakashi said quietly. Naruto has the power, just not the knowledge. As much as he will hate me for doing it. I agree. The older woman stated. Get him ready, Kakashi. Let's try to avoid history. I am not going to lose Naruto to that fate. That brat asked for my job years ago and I am going to make damn sure he's around to take it. He continued to try to aid his son. Minato was also trying to please an angry death god. Despite everything he had done was against the being's soul wishes. The Shinigami had understood the desperation the former Hokage had towards the young boy, who had a great but pain-filled destiny. The youth who was his son. But the youth had a destiny, which could not be denied. This fate, the youth had, was one to save the fate of his world. Without him, this world was doomed to destruction. This was why he was subtly aiding Minato in his efforts to push his son towards the one man who could help him, one Kakashi Hatake. But Naruto was of course being stubborn, much like his father. Hence while his father pulled the strings and placed hints in the minds of those he could talk to. He was approaching this from another angle. The angle of the demon that resides within the seal. The Shinigami knew that the Kyuubi had just as much a vested interest in the welfare of his jailer than even said jailer knew about. So while Naruto was asleep that night in his own apartment, the death god paid a visit to the mighty fox in his cell. So what brings the almighty god of a death to my jail cell? Am I to be freed? The red demon chuckled wryly. It knows full well the answer to be no, but is startled as the Shinigami looks at him with a pointed gaze. It could be arranged. Knowing that there is always a catch with the being before him, the Kyuubi narrows its beastly eyes as it stares at one of the ones responsible for his situation. The Gaki is pissed at the one-eyed one. And to be honest, I really don't blame him. Nor do I, but come what may, you and the boy have a shared destiny. If you do not push him to go with the other, not only will you fail in your vengeance, but you will die along with him. With no chance of rebirth. I know my sentence, death god. The Kyuubi growled. But must it really be the Cyclops? Why can I not train him in my powers? A pointed expression is directed towards the unrepentant fox demon that looks smug. You and I both already know that answer, that beast. Although it deprived the boy of his father and mother, if he had not stopped and summoned me when he did, this world would have suffered far more than what is to happen. What can I say? I was angry, do you blame me? That thing and his little servants killed my kits. It is the only reason why I have not exerted my powers beyond this blasted seal as I could have. You know this thing stopped holding me years ago. That is true, it has. Why have you not? Saying nothing, the fox just looks at him and the god smiles. You respect your jailer. I admit the meat shield has grown on me. There has been many times as he grew that he could have used my power to not only set me free but to also destroy everything in this rotten little village. Instead he has grown, and as he grew he has changed the ideals of those very ones who condemned him. Nodding his head in understanding, the god looked at the being who was calm from within its cell. So you will speak with your jailer? Yes. I will point out something about the other, that if they are to fight before all else is done, the one-eyed one is the only one who can teach him its weakness. It's up to the Cyclops after that. Agreed. For this I will speak to the others on your rebirth. You better. I do not relish being inside this flesh bag any longer than I have to be. That said, the god departs the seal and the slumbering jailer. As he does so, he finds gazing high up in a tree, with a quiet and sad longing expression on his face, was the one-eyed ninja whom desires to go on protecting this young man with all his heart. Naruto was angry. Scratch that, he was beyond angry. He was downright furious at what his Ba-chan had told him to do. The older woman, whom as much as involved in this as she was, had ordered him to train with Kakashi when not in missions. Needless to say, his destructive capabilities matched hers that morning as he went ballistic. Knowing he could never hurt the older woman, whom had done more than most when it came to keeping his secret and to keeping his sanity intact from time to time, he had immediately left to the training grounds and let loose so many Rasengans upon it, that the groundskeepers will be working it well until next week. With the aid of those ninjas with the special affinities for it. Gaki, if you don't calm down, I'm going to personally do a few things from here to make you regret giving me a restless nap. Startled by the voice of the fox, Naruto finds himself in a trance as he is brought down to the seal. Watching as once again the smoke from before manifests itself, the Kyuubi is looking at him with malevolent red eyes. Eyes narrowing as the Kyuubi glares at him, Naruto can't help but wonder. Why did you bring me down here, you damn fox? Because they're right, fleshbag, you need the one-eyed one if you are going to get your friend back. Growling in response to that comment, the Kyuubi responds in kind with a growl of his own. One that is far more deadly than any Naruto could ever give. Although he is admittedly afraid of what this beast could do to his mind and body from inside him, Naruto gazes into this vicious eyes with a stubbornness to rival that of a god. He can't teach me anything new. Then you already lost Meatshield. You forget he was the one who taught your spirit brother, the one you went to get back, that little skill that punched an arm through your chest, or have you forgotten? Startled, Naruto looks guilty as he realizes that the demon is right, by his comments. Finding the fox staring at him smugly, he turns away to hide his shame. So focused on getting Sasuke back and surviving Akatsuki, he had forgotten that his friend had almost killed him years ago with that technique. You've forgotten that, I see. Shut up, you damn fox. Chuckling maliciously, the fox ignores him, continuing to speak the truth. Listen, little jailer, you already know your friend is strong and more than likely knows a lot more techniques now, just like that one that can and will kill us. That one-eyed one that you are angry at was the one who invented it, and he was the one who taught the Uchiha. Don't you think, you moronic little morsel, he would also know its weakness as well as that of the other? Caught off guard by the fox's words, the blonde found himself thrust out of the seal with a parting shot made by the fox. Think about it and take advantage of what he knows. Through him you might just succeed, Gaki. 88888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888888. Finally, for a change. Admittedly, he was concerned about Naruto. The youth was, according to Tsunade, far from pleased at the order given to him to come and work with himself upon jutsus to survive not only Akatsuki, but jutsus that could possibly save a lost friend and missing brother in arms for the blonde. And most of these jutsus that Kakashi was intent on showing him were ones that Minato had taught him, including the Hiriashin. So to say, he was surprised to already find the said youth there, meditating. Kakashi was not only surprised, but grateful. Maybe there was a chance to earn the youth's forgiveness after all. But as Blue Eyes opened and looked at him coldly, the older man couldn't help but sigh. There was hope for him, but who's to say Naruto was going to make it easy? To say Naruto was not pleased at how these last couple of weeks had been would be an understatement. Forced, in his opinion, to train with the legendary copy ninja, Naruto was exceptionally hostile during training. Kakashi, someone who had supposed to be his teacher, his trainer for when he was younger, and not do it. Well, it hurt him a lot. It hurt him even more that those times he really needed someone to talk as he grew up, the only adult male he should have been able to confide in other than Iruka was Kakashi. Iruka was the father figure as a child, but as he grew, Naruto realized that the Chunin was more of a brother than a father to him. It didn't really make a difference though, for if it wasn't for the dark-haired ninja, Naruto might never have been able to do the things he had done. Kakashi, on the other hand, despite his lateness, or his lazy kind of attitude, when things mattered he protected Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke. He set down the rules when time came, he actually made time to be with them to a degree. But, well, when it came to things important, it felt like he and Sakura played second fiddle to Sasuke. And over time Naruto started to lose his faith in the one man, whom before this had started, the blonde looked to as a father. Those words that day on top of the hospital, before Sasuke had left, they hurt. It had hurt him so much to be scolded for using what was his father's prized technique, and not to hear Sasuke get the same for using the Chidori. Hurt even more, that unlike Sakura and the others who spent time writing to him via Jiraiya, that not once did Kakashi do the same. Naruto, focus. I Kakashi-sensei. The youth muttered coldly. The older man winced a little bit at the tone, looks with regret at the blonde that confuses him greatly. Enough that Naruto wonders, did Kakashi truly regret not talking to him? Shaking his head free of that little childlike hope within, the blonde hardens his gaze once more. Glaring as he continues to work on the instructions alongside his clones, the youth turns his back on the man, never noticing the sorrow and the longing for acceptance. Therefore he was surprised as Naruto all of a sudden asks him something that catches him off guard. Why did you not tell me before? Pausing in surprise as this is the first time Naruto has started to willingly speak with him. Kakashi looks at the blonde that despite the cold and bitterness of disappointment in his eyes, there is a lost little boy, searching for something or someone to hold on to. A little boy that even at this moment unknowingly reaches out to the spirit of said man, who starts to cry with his own pain. Minato listened and felt the sadness in the voice of his son. His only child that by all accounts should have had felt love and joy as a little boy. But instead knew nothing but hate. Already he begged and pleaded with the god of death, that when it came time for Iruka to come and sit for judgment, that he be allowed to speak for the Chunin. The Shinigami had humored him for a moment and simply said there was no need. The dark-haired man's kind and gentle heart towards Naruto had plain out guaranteed him a spot in the light. Same goes for many others that had over the years had made the little boy grow and know that even though he knew mostly hate, there was in fact some good in the world. The ramen chef owner and his daughter, Tsunade, Jiraiya, Rock Lee, Hinata and many others. There was even some that because of his son being there, that he was saving with his presence. Two who would have had far more miserable fates in store for them, if Naruto had died. Sasuke and Kakashi. Their fates were still undetermined at this time in the eyes of the Shinigami. But their destiny, though rested alongside that of Naruto. To fight what was needed, was power, yes. But bonds that not only Naruto must feel, but the Kyuubi as well. Sasuke was indeed a brother in all but blood to the Fox vessel, but unknowingly to both youths the Fox had felt similar issues, because of that fateful day in the Valley of the End. The Fox was not stupid, the killing intent was there in both of the boys at that time. But what was overriding it though was the scent of kinship and understanding. They knew, despite all denials on the Uchiha's part. They knew what had passed between them and that was why Naruto was so desperate to save the dark-haired teen from the snake. Something that even now as Minato watches Kakashi struggle to answer could see starting to now form between his son and his former student. A familial bond. Naruto. I didn't know. Kakashi said reluctantly. Before Naruto could protest that, Kakashi holds up his hand. Please let me finish. I didn't know but I think it was because I was afraid. Why? The teenager replied sadly and with bitterness. Because of my tenant. The older man looks at Naruto helplessly and with complete pain and sadness as he shrugs. No, I don't know. Looking at you now though I think it was because you look so much like him. So much so that I was scared to get close. That said, the copy ninja vanishes in a rush of emotions in front of the blonde youth. The confusion evident still in Naruto's eyes it is at the moment that Tsunade steps forward. Having been watching quietly from the shadows, she knew somehow this was the day to observe the young man that she considered family. After all, she was the one person whom Naruto looks to as a mother, and who now knows she is needed. Care to talk, Naruto-kun? Tsunade smiled as Naruto stepped into the Hokage offices first. Allowing her to close the door behind him, the youth looked at her with a perplexed and sad expression. What is wrong with me, Ba-chan? The blonde said forlornly as he gazes up at her with his bright blue eyes. The older woman looks at him and gently hugs him close before parting away. Let me show you Naruto. The woman states with a gentle smile. Although I know you see your father's face on the monument every day, maybe you never noticed the painting of him here in the office. There's paintings. Chuckling softly in amusement, as the blonde has more often than not been a little oblivious to things, she gestures to a series of 5 images. Your father is the one right before mine, Naruto. That is how he looks. Now as he starts gulping a bit, the 15-year-old feels like he is 5 years old again. For as he approaches the images of the past Hokages, what should be a joy for him, in truly seeing an image of his departed father, becomes pain. Shaking his head free of dark thoughts, of disappointment and regret, Naruto strides over and looks at the image next to that of Tsunade's and the third. What he sees is what surprises him. Because except for the marks on his cheeks, the painting was an exact duplicate of himself. I see you know how much you look like him. Clutching his hand into a fist, the blonde resists the urge to punch something hard. His own mind in turmoil, at this he looks at the older woman with a mixture of so many negative emotions that she reaches out to grasp his hands. her eyes mirroring his pained expression as he drops to his knees in front of her in tears. Then why doesn't everyone know? Why don't people know that their great hero is my father? Why didn't Kakashi or any of the others acknowledge me? It is because they choose not to, Naruto. Tsunade whispered sadly. Most of the villagers worshipped your father. To them he was their hero, he saved them all. To lose him as they did was a nightmare, and to many for him to place the Kyuubi in you. I don't think they could understand it, nevertheless accept it. It would mean their hero did something that in their eyes, was awful. A small reluctant understanding dawns in Naruto's eyes, but it quickly disappears as thoughts of his sensei and the favoritism shown to a missing and dear friend. A brother in all but blood. I can understand that, Ba-chan, but it does not give him an excuse. Naruto stated coolly. Naruto, listen to me for a second. No, I won't. Every time Ba-chan, every damn time I ever wanted his help, asked for his advice, every time he turned me away. Why should I turn to him now? It doesn't matter that my father was his teacher. What matters is that he was supposed to be my teacher. The one person I was to trust to show me how to use my skills, the one person whom was supposed to show me how to achieve my dreams. The one person who gave me rules, who gave me direction. Everything that a father does. But he did nothing else but teach me tree walking to control my errant chakra. He never noticed the seal Orochimaru had put on me after the exams. And you can't tell me he didn't know about the Kyuubi then. I know damn well he did. Stalking out in intense anger at that moment, the blonde woman sighs as another steps from the shadows. I told you not to interfere, Tsunade. Jiraiya said quietly and with regret. Naruto has many years of rage inside him. To many, and what Kakashi did, or should I say didn't do, would and will be hard to forget. Then what do we do, Jiraiya? He needs Kakashi beside him. You heard his words, didn't you? Reluctantly the Toad Sannin nods his head. Yes. Deep down there is still a strong need to make Kakashi proud of him, as a father would a son. Minato was in pain. He was in serious pain as he watched Kakashi and his son continue training despite the reluctance in one half of the pair to be around the other. He was in pain because he saw what was coming. Soon they would be off for news of his son's missing brother in spirit. Being where he was, as the Uchiha clan was massacred, he had felt sorry for the youngest boy. He was surprised at the sad and yet knowing comment of the death god as one by one the once overly proud clan came in. Sometimes pride cometh before the fall. Pride, to say that the Uchihas were a prideful clan would be quite true. Not only that, but their arrogance was a definite slam in the negative as well. But as he tried to talk to the Shinigami about it, the death god simply looked at him with a sad and yet painful smile. Naruto is the catalyst to heal him. Confused, as he watched the events unfolding, Minato realized what his son was achieving unlike many others in the village. He was turning the last of the loyal Uchihas into someone whom otherwise would face a dark fate. He had asked why so many had to die. The Shinigami had simply looked at him and told him. Their fate was determined. Because Sasuke was still innocent, still naive somewhat, he could be saved. And slowly, his son was succeeding into changing the young survivor into a normal human. The young boy was becoming approachable, unlike his former clansmen. And it was because of his son, his lonely son, who showed him what it meant to be a child. When by all rights he should be, rather than being forced to grow into something he is not. A martyr. It was at that moment that the spirit of his wife had come to join him. Lost in thought as he was, Kushina had caught him off guard. Especially as she had come running up to him, to hug him as she placed kisses all over his face. Happy and clutching her dearly to him, never wanting to let her go. His wings wrapping themselves around both himself and her. The two watched in sadness as their son trained with Kakashi, the woman being held back from wanting to go to her little boy, who screams out for love and approval. But it was only moments later that Minato could not help but look at the death god in puzzlement at this unexpected pleasure of his wife beside him. For despite everything he had expected to be alone with the god for all eternity. You will need her calm soon. It was at that moment that the Shinigami waved his hand and forwarded time. Although there was almost a cold tension between them, his son and Kakashi were on a mission of importance along with Sakura and a new kid named Sai. Beside them were obviously a Inuzuka, an Aburame, and a Hyuga. They were tracking something, but it was in the second set of images that caused Minato to tremble. Jiraiya entering rain territory, where the ninja Pain was. Even the heavens trembled at the time when Pain would come. This ninja alone had brought about many deaths, and for Minato to watch his beloved teacher and sensei go into that man's territory. Your son will soon receive his first inheritance. The death god said sadly. He will soon become the next Toad Sage. Minato screamed his pain at those words. It was so loud and so mournful at that singular statement of the god, that nature herself reacted to his emotional turmoil. All over the 5 nations a sad yet howling wind bit through villagers and ninja alike. Some ignored, but most fought the urge to cry. The pain in the wind was enough to make them wish that whoever was hurting would soon be at peace. The howling wind was indeed felt by many and all involved on the real world. The sorrow was genuine within its coldness, and the anguish caused many to get closer together, as if to protect those bonds that they have. To those in the summoning world, Gamabunta had felt the connection between himself and the most irritating pervert severe, and in such a way that despite everything, he mourned the death of a friend. Hey Pops, are we going to let bro hold the contract now? Looking down at Gamakichi, the boss Toad simply nods his head. Don't know son, it depends if he can prove himself worthy to not just me but to the others. Knowing who his Pops refers to, Gamakichi says nothing else. Unlike most of the other summons creatures, the toads like the snakes were most peculiar about whom they would work with. Jiraiya the age-old pervert was fated to hold it, and did so as the first one in hundreds of years according to the ancient toad seers. With his death the only one who could summon them was Naruto. What would he have to do Pops? That's up to the elders. Nothing else said all Gamakichi and the other toads that had come to like the prankster blonde. All that was heard though was a low keening wail of mourning as the death of a summoner hit the world of the greater beasts. But as it passed it awakened another summons beast. A beast that can sense one that is like them in so many ways that it smiles with impish anticipation. And it is the same one of which the elder toads were working with right now. Tracking Sasuke as he did, Naruto was admittedly hopeful of running into his friend again. The fact that a clone was taken out, the youth immediately knew what direction he had run to. This strange man, this one in the weird mask, had impeded his way. It was long enough that now he wonders, where did his friend go? Musing about what to do next, he does not notice the various expressions on the faces of his companions. But as that wind hits, Naruto feels a sense of loss hit him. A loss that feels so close to home, that out of need and instinct the youth immediately summons a beast. Ignorant of the others who scrambled to get out of the way as a large cloud of smoke emerges, all including the blonde are surprised as not just a toad appears. So does a 5-tailed red fox. The familiar presence of Gamakichi, who stares mournfully at Naruto, was comforting. But the fact that he holds a familiar scroll with him, one that is very recognizable as the contract. The fact that the fox holds one as well was puzzling. The fact that the two looked at one another, Naruto as well as the others could see the silent communication between the two beasts. Both beasts, although childlike in appearance and demeanor, were wearing kimonos of black as if in mourning. It was the presence of Pakun, also in black, who had appeared without being summoned, who spoke volumes. Pakun. Greetings Kakashi. The dog said quietly. Follow me please. The copy ninja, confused at the request of his longtime tracker friend, followed the little dog into the woods. The rest of the team looked at one another in confusion as both the fox with the scroll in the tails and Gamakichi approached Naruto. I'm sorry bro, we will miss him. Even Pops mourns. Confused and wondering even more. A look of almost panicky fear as the fox approaches with his own words. Feminine voice speaking out softly. The red fox looked with a nuzzling sorrow as she brushed against his leg as if to offer him comfort. I am sorry too. From what the toads told me, he was a good man. It was at that moment that a sad sound of surprise and regret emitted from Sakura as Kakashi himself re-emerged with Pakun. The blonde shaking his head as if in disbelief at what the words have implied or only emphasized as Pakun howls. What's going on, Naruto? Kakashi states quietly. No, he can't be. The blonde whimpered out as he tries to back away. Sakura preventing him. As she had put two and two together, she simply hugs him in that moment. Naruto, whispered the pink-haired girl quietly, as she started to approach her friend, when he wrenched away as if to get away from the implication and the sorrow in Kakashi's gaze. Naruto, it's Jiraiya. No, he's not dead. Damn it, he's not dead. Naruto screamed out, the demonic aura of the Kyuubi flaring up. Kakashi quickly whips out a seal and slams it on top of the blonde's forehead. For once, he is grateful to those tiny slips of paper. Grateful for the rest it will give Naruto. As Naruto passes out, he catches the youth with the aid of the fox summons who cushioned his head with her tails as Kakashi laid the youth down. What's going on? Kiba asked quietly in his confusion. Akamaru, understanding the howls Pakun has been doing, he himself starts howling in sorrow for his friend's loss. It's the pervy sage, Gamakichi said quietly. He's dead. Naruto is now the Toad Guardian. Eyes widen at the implication of the little toad's words. One of the three Sannin, the greatest ninja ever to come out of Konoha, save for the Yondaime, was gone. His title passed on apparently to their knuckle-headed friend. It was at that moment that the little fox who gently rumbles her belly that catches their attention now. I am here to offer him a rare chance, to become the first to summon my kind in over 1500 years, the red fox stated quietly. My name is Kitala. Has been 3 days since the news of Jiraiya's death had spread across the 5 shinobi nations. Morning colors flew in Konoha as the tracker team returned. Having lost track of Sasuke, the fact that there would be a memorial for the Toad Sannin, Kakashi had ordered the return of both teams to Konoha. Twice since then he had been forced to use those slips of paper to knock Naruto out, to keep the Kyuubi from exerting its control. But more to keep Naruto from going out and getting himself killed in a need for vengeance for his fallen teacher. He was thankful for the presence of Akamaru, the massive dog with Kiba's directions, had allowed Naruto to be strapped to his backside. And considering the mutt was just as quick as them, it allowed the team to move at a reasonable fast pace without losing time. Setting up the camp, for the last night before their official arrival, Kakashi looked to find Naruto being eased up off of Akamaru. After being laid down and onto the ground gently, Kakashi approaches and keeps watch over the blonde like a father would his son. The others who were Naruto's friends smiled gently at the quiet steadfast gaze of the older man who looked out for him. That of someone who cared. Kakashi-sensei, he will be fine. Sakura whispered softly. Come eat. Hinata curling up next to Naruto to watch over him as the medic pulls the copy ninja away. When it had first happened, it was the presence of Hinata as well that had soothed the blonde. The way they figured it was something about her scent that calmed Naruto. That allowed him to take comfort in her warmth. It was also the only way they had been able to get Kakashi to eat. For other than struggling to knock Naruto out, they have noticed that the normally together ninja and their knuckle-headed friend had been quiet. Almost alone compared to their camaraderie of the past. Gamakichi having left, he entrusted the scroll to those whom Naruto knew well. Namely Sakura, who held it tightly to her, but it was their newest companion, who stunned them all. The little fox had patrolled in Naruto's stead, when they camped for the night. In fact, it was twice that they had found ninjas while albeit not dead, were trapped in genjutsu so powerful that not even Kakashi could break unless Kitala willed it. And she did all this while carrying the scroll she intended for Naruto to have when he was all right. Unusual for a summons, as they long expected her to have vanished by now. But Kitala had simply looked at them and gave a mischievous grin. Seconds later, several doppelgangers of her in various colors emerged, and well as they ran through fire and trees, the little fox taught them a lesson. It is true we foxes are dangerous when angered. But part of what you see is also not real. We are the masters of illusion. Ask yourself, how much of Konoha did our former lord really destroy that day? This had put the team as well as their leaders in deep thought. Shino, being the unofficial leader in place of Kurenai as she was on pregnancy leave, was the first to have spoken. Kakashi-sama, is it true what she says about that day the Nine Tails attacked? Silent and thoughtful Kakashi nods his head. Although we lost many that day, what was destroyed were things we had made. Things that we as a whole village had built. It was like the Kyuubi wanted to remove traces of us from his lands. Not the land itself. Smirking within the seal, the Kyuubi just nods his head as he mused within his cage. I am a creature of nature. When something feels tainted to my land, I want to remove it. Not aware of the malicious nature of the beast within their friend's body, this allowed the others of Naruto's small group to think. But this time it was Sakura who spoke. Her voice quiet and delicate, the young woman looked up at Kakashi thoughtfully. Tamari-sama once told me alongside Gaara-san that to defeat a Biju was impossible. They were nature and chakra itself. You can't defeat what was there to make life to begin with. Her words rocking through those around them, Kakashi became alert, as did Hinata when Naruto started to come to. The blonde blinking sleepy blue eyes as well as ones filled with pain and sadness. You okay, Naruto? Kakashi said quietly. His hands reaching for the slips of paper, Naruto held his hand up and shook his head. Don't, please. I'm all right. I won't run off. The blonde moaned in protest as he not only noticed their surroundings were different, but their readiness to chase after him. Where are we? About a day's run from Konoha, Naruto-kun. Kakashi-san thought you might want to be there for Jiraiya-san's memorial. Hinata replied softly. Kakashi-san sent Pakun-kun to get the details as we made our way back. It's the day after tomorrow. Hearing her words, the blonde finds himself looking at the older man who is walking away in disbelief. Kakashi-sensei, you did that for me. Pausing in mid-step, the others watch as the copy nin simply nods his head before vanishing in a puff of smoke. Naruto was quiet. For the first time in a while, he was so quiet to the point that the villagers, whether they liked him or not, were worried. Never before had the loudmouthed ninja been so silent to the point that even they wondered if he was all right. The memorial was really affecting their knuckle-headed ninja. Sakura beside him as well as several others of the best crop of ninjas his age, the small group of young men and women offered him what comfort they could. The pink-haired medic nin, and heir to their Godime's legacy, was holding tightly onto one hand, as the Hyuga heiress was holding onto the other. Both girls' hands were clutching his as despite his silence, tears flowed down his cheeks in rivers of sadness. This time, not a single villager chased him away. And also many minds were fully changed, because as they stared at the features of the blonde, regardless of who they reminded them of, no demon would mourn a Sannin as much as this boy was. Demons would celebrate the death of their enemies, would they not? Inside the seal, the Kyuubi studies to grave through Naruto's eyes. The youth never noticing how his senses have been enhanced in thanks to the being inside him. The fox demon mourns himself for the loss of someone who helped make his container strong. After all, regardless of whether or not it would be a pain in the ass to be reborn, until that time comes, this man was responsible for keeping him and his jailer alive for close to 3 years. Thank you, pervy sage. Thank you for being there for me when no one else would. Naruto whispered forlornly, and all of a sudden, never realizing he spoke aloud, Naruto's words were heard by not only his friends around him, but by a gray-haired ninja whose heart almost breaks from the sad tone of loneliness in his voice. Never before has Kakashi found himself resenting a dead man like he does Jiraiya. The affection and the love in Naruto's voice were evident, and something that the copy ninja should have had long before the Toad Sage came onto the scene. Tsunade, having heard Naruto's words, that albeit innocent as they were, She knew the copy ninja was hurting now. But maybe it was a beginning for the older man to really truly understand the young blonde. Although Iruka was the elder brother, herself a mother in the eyes of her favorite ninja, it was to Kakashi himself that Naruto started associating fatherhood. Approaching the younger man as the memorial started to end, the blonde smiled a soft and gentle gaze. Give him time, Kakashi, the blonde woman stated quietly. She, herself was in mourning for the loss of a dearest friend and former teammate. But knowing how she must be strong for the young boy who needs her now. She had chosen to quietly get drunk when the news had hit her before his return. For once Shizune had allowed her that much. Give him time, Kakashi. You already made one step in the direction. The blonde smiled softly. He's here, is he not? Confused for a moment, Kakashi finds himself gazing into the eyes of his two students. It is at that moment that the blonde spoke. Kakashi-sensei. Yes, Naruto. Teach me more. Help me become strong, so I won't lose any more of my precious people. A small and proud smile erupted onto the copy ninja's lips as Sakura had repeated the same thing to Tsunade. Hinata and the others around them, Kakashi nods his head in acceptance of the request. Tomorrow, 8 a.m., meet me on the bridge. To also say it was for a variety of reasons, of which revenge was a part of, was also true, to those watching the sessions. Kakashi was relieved Naruto had started to talk to him again. But it was more or less it was a truce of sorts. Naruto would simply listen and do what Kakashi instructed. But the blonde was most assuredly upset. Not that anyone could blame him. Sakura cautiously spoke to Tsunade just the other day of some of the memories of the departed Sannin. Memories that, although it was like watching a boy and a perverted uncle, in their minds, they couldn't help but smile. Jiraiya had given Naruto a sense of familial acceptance. It was through the Toad Sage that Naruto had really truly understood what each of the precious people in his life really meant to him. And it increased his desire only more to become Hokage, so that he can protect them fully. To also say it was for a variety of reasons, of which revenge was a part of, was also true, to those watching the sessions. Kakashi was relieved Naruto had started to talk to him again. But it was more or less it was a truce of sorts. Naruto would simply listen and do what Kakashi instructed. But the blonde was most assuredly upset. Not that anyone could blame him. Sakura cautiously spoke to Tsunade just the other day of some of the memories of the departed Sannin. Memories that, although it was like watching a boy and a perverted uncle, in their minds, they couldn't help but smile. Jiraiya had given Naruto a sense of familial acceptance. It was through the Toad Sage that Naruto had really truly understood what each of the precious people in his life really meant to him. And it increased his desire only more to become Hokage, so that he can protect them fully. Was then that realized on that trip, that Iruka was more like a caring big brother and not a father. That Tsunade herself had become his mother as Sakura and Shizune were sisters. What made them sad were the memories which were shared with Jiraiya concerning that day in the Valley of the End. Ones that made even Sakura cry, as it brought Tsunade to a quiet kind of sadness that was very much unlike the normally strong woman. Sakura, I will teach you more. Maybe with your help history can stop repeating itself. I think that will be the greatest thing I can do to remember Jiraiya. Admittedly confused at first, the young woman understood as her teacher told her of the dream that Toad Sannin first hand long ago. When his friend left, much like Sasuke did. But unlike Sorotobi, Kakashi, despite his favoritism in the beginning, had done something that the third had never done. He interfered in his students' fights. Several times, it was the copy ninja who had kept the two boys from killing each other in their rivalry. Several times, Kakashi was the one who set down the rules. He was the one before the exams and everything started, who advised them. Who helped them to believe in themselves in the beginning. It was he who taught them the meaning of bonds. Crash, whack, slam. Which was another reason why she is making sure that Kakashi and Sakura was around Naruto as often as she could from here on out. Especially Kakashi, because maybe, just maybe, The fact that should Sasuke and Naruto meet again, he might be able to do something their old sensei could not. Tsunade reflected to herself that day. Save what is left. Sorotobi could not. Maybe Kakashi could.